Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Easy Conversations podcast, a podcast about having easy conversations. I'm your host, Furkan Dandia. In this week's episode, I'm excited to welcome Bryan Reeves. Bryan is a former United States Air Force captain, and after surviving multiple dark nights of the soul, Bryan is now a life coach and relationship coach supporting men, women, and couples all over the world to creating thriving lives and relationships. His viral blog, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, has been read by over 30 million people worldwide. His 2 books on Amazon, including Tell the Truth, Let the Peace Fall Where It May, and his online courses, including the Boundaries program, Relationships Suck Without Boundaries, have helped countless thousands of people across the globe make sense of love and intimacy's often frustrating senselessness. In this episode, Bryan shares his journey of letting his fears and wounds hold him back from accepting the vulnerability of a relationship. It was not until he truly embodied himself and stepped into the discomfort of feeling vulnerable that he could not accept a relationship entirely. Bryan and I also discuss some healthy tools people can use in their relationships regarding communication and conflict resolution. Bryan also shares the context behind his book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, and what that means for him. Please connect with Bryan on Instagram or go to his website at www.bryanreeves.com. And if at the end of the episode you could leave a 5-star review, I would truly appreciate it. All right, Bryan, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for taking the time and your willingness to come on here and have this conversation with me. I'm super excited. I've been familiar with your work for a while, and I'll share a little bit of story around how I came across your name. But before we get started, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and share with the listeners what is it that you do and some of the work you've been doing so far.
Well, thanks, Furkan. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Nice to see you. And so my name is Bryan Reeves, Bryan with a Y, Reeves. That's very important to me. Spell my name with a Y because my own sister many, many years ago would spell my name with an I, maybe just to irritate me. I'm not sure. But anyway, wow. Well, I'm, I like to say I'm a 48 years exquisitely aged man. I do relationship work largely. I'm a men's coach. I'm a relationship coach. I really specialize in working with men right now, although I've been working with couples for many years. I'm really focusing on working with men because, for the first, let's see, from 18 to say 38 in my life. So for the first 20 years of my adult dating and relationship life, I sucked at relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I was really bad. And I didn't do the overtly terrible things like cheat on my partners or physically abuse them or even verbally abuse them. I didn't do those kinds of things, but I made every other mistake that you could possibly make, and it's just having great intentions. And so yeah, it wasn't really until my late 30s, about 10 years ago, that I started getting a clue that maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I don't really like to use the word wrong, but maybe I'm unskillful at this. And, I'm very educated. I was an Air Force captain, a United States Air Force captain. I was very trained. I have a master's degree in human relations that I got in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I got 3 sisters, 2 mothers. I was educated and smart. And I knew how to be around women, and still my relationships just sucked.
Yeah.
So that's when about 10, 12 years ago, I really started throwing myself into learning about relationships, and here I am today, now working with couples still and men predominantly on relationship stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure we'll get into it. And a lot of what you shared resonates for me too. And I think what I've come to realize is it's not your education necessarily. It's your willingness to look inward and do that work, and recognizing, to your point, that we're making mistakes And I think around that 30-year kind of mark is where a lot of us figure that out, if we really want to, right? And you see it, like some people never do. For me, what really inspired me about the work you're doing, I came across you on the Mark Groves podcast several years ago. And at the time, I was going through a separation, and I was worried about how that was going to impact my relationship with my son. And I remember how you shared your own story of repairing with your father, going through a similar experience as a child. So that gave me a lot of peace. So I'm grateful to have this opportunity to thank you, not in person, but virtually. So thank you for sharing that story, because that really helped me at the time. But yeah, so I mean, with the book as well. So you've got your book there, Choose Her Every Day. What's the idea behind the book? And is there a component of doing our own healing as men, where we can show up and choose our partners in the right way?
Yeah. So my book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, was born of my realization that at least up until 40, 41 years old, when I started writing that book, I realized that the most important intimate relationship of my life, which lasted 5 years up to that point, I stayed in it for 5 years, but I did not choose this woman that I stayed with fully. I did not choose her every day. In fact, I was half in, half out every day for 5 years. Even when my mouth would say that I was all in, so much about my actions, my behaviors, I was not all in. And she felt that. And I see this spiral a lot for men and women, particularly heterosexual relationships, where and it doesn't always, I mean, there's no always anything when it comes to relationships, but there are patterns. And I was caught in this pattern where I was waiting for some perfect relating from my partner. And so long as that wasn't happening, I was not able to fully go all in on the relationship. I felt trapped by the experience, and I don't want to feel trapped. I want to feel free. That's the core masculine value is freedom. And I wanted to feel, anything that causes me to feel not free is extremely painful and frightening. And but that was my experience in the relationship. And so she could feel that. Well, she was always agitating for more connection. She wanted to feel more connected to me. And the more, or I should say well, the less I was able to be all in, committed, choosing her every day, the more she felt threatened that our connection was not stable or reliable. And she was right. But because neither one of us had any awareness around this, in her case, she just got more angry and more demanding, and it's like her claws came out to get me closer to her. And the more her claws came out, the more I checked out of the relationship. And the more I checked out, the more her claws came out. And it was just this brutal, horrible cycle for 5 years that I think by the end, we both were just exhausted and frustrated and angry and resentful and pissed off. And neither one of us knew how the hell this had just happened.
Right.
So, so I'm married now. I'm 7 years with my wife, and I met her when I was 41. And I choose her every day or leave her. If are you in a relationship, Furkan?
Not right now. No, I'm doing my own healing and work right now.
Okay. Yeah. So, when you're in relationship, I don't care how much work you've done. I did a lot of work as well when I was single before I met my wife. And I think that has great value, but nothing compares to actually being in relationship. There's a whole new level of work that happens when you're in relationship. And, I've always chosen strong-willed, independent women who, uh, you know, won't let me push them around for a second.
Yeah.
And the practice of choosing her every day I think is a call. Since we're talking about speaking to men in your question, I think that this title, this practice is confronting to men,
Mm-hmm.
because relationship is an obligation of sorts. It is a bonding. It's a bondage. It is a I think relationship done well is a devotional practice. I heard someone say once, there's no such thing as 99% committed.
Right.
You either you're all in or you're not. Devotion means I say no to all other things that would distract me from my devotional practice. Whether your devotional practice is a meditation practice or some
Mm-hmm.
spiritual or religious practice. I mean, you say no to the things that will distract you from that practice. And I think the same is true for relationship. I'm not devoted to my wife's ego.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not devoted to my wife's whims. I'm not devoted to her, capricious desires, like one day are this way and the next day are that way. No, but I am devoted to the relationship. I am all in on this relationship, and I'm all in on all that my wife brings to it.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's
And
important to note, like you said, you could do your own healing, like what I'm doing, and you mentioned you were doing, and I kind of use the sports analogy, right? You can practice the plays all you want, but until you're not playing the game, you're not really tested. And that's where we get
right.
tested in relationships, where
Yeah.
we get triggered, and we have to take those opportunities to understand why we're being triggered and have those conversations with our partner. And even with the devotion piece, like you said, there's you see a lot of men, they'll be devoted to their sports team, right? Like
Right.
they won't cheer for any other team. Like, it's unconditional, whether the
Right.
team is losing or winning. And we don't tend to do that with our relationships.
I think that's a great point. In fact, a lot of men will look down on other men who abandon their sports team in a time of in an era of trouble and dysfunction when they're losing. I absolutely agree. I think the same is true for our intimate relationships. Now, that's not to say that if my sports team is doing horrible things in the world, if the
Yeah.
management is mistreating employees, if they're not serving the community well, I mean, if it's a dysfunctional relationship, well, it's important that we have boundaries. Accountability is important. My I don't push my wife around and she doesn't push me around. We have healthy
Yeah.
boundaries. We maintain a respectful stance towards each other.
Yeah.
But yes, there are seasons. There are seasons of sexual attraction where some seasons, man, you're hot and heavy and just can't keep your hands off each other. And there are other seasons where other things are more preoccupying your mind. I mean, especially you have children, or just it's a busy season at work, or just all kinds of things, maybe sickness or illness, or you just reach a lull. All of that can be worked with,
Yeah.
but it does require, I believe, in my experience, it does require the orientation of devotion. I am devoted to, and please hear me again, I'm not devoted to my wife's ego.
Mm-hmm.
But I am devoted to having a thriving relationship with my wife. That's
Right.
my devotional practice. It's to supporting our relationship towards thriving. I'm devoted to that. And sometimes that means, well, often it means, checking my own behavior, investigating my own agendas and where am I out of integrity. Sure, all those things. But it also means making sure that I have boundaries with her so that she's also not doing things that don't serve us or the
Right.
relationship. It's a it's a mutual dance, or it's a ugly dance if it
Yeah.
ain't mutual.
Right. Right. And what does that look like for you guys in terms of like supporting each other's growth? Because quite often, I see people, they'll make their independent growth or individual growth dependent on how their partner's showing up or what they're doing. How do you guys support each other in that space? And what type of conversations do you have in that regard?
Yeah, it's a great question. I it's a really great question, because I hear from a lot of people, how do I get my partner to X, to whatever, to do something, to do this, to do that, to not do this? How do I get them to go to therapy? How do I get them to show up, whatever? And my response is, you can't get them to do anything they don't want to do on some
Right.
level that they
Yeah.
are inspired or want to do. And if you could get them to do it, then it probably won't go well,
Right.
because they won't respect themselves for doing it, and then you won't respect them either. It just won't go well. So my wife and I both practice relationship as invitation, not obligation. We
Mm.
don't I'm not obligated to do certain things, and she's not obligated, but we live as an invitation to what we want to experience. So what I mean by that is, um, growth is a core value for both of us.
Right.
I was in a relationship, that 5-year relationship, where my partner did not prioritize growth in the
Mm.
same way that I did. Now, I didn't understand this. I didn't have the language to talk about it, but that was a massive disconnect between us. My partner and I, we both value growth. So when so we support each other in all the ways that we're trying to grow. She does a lot of therapy. She's a therapist. Therapy is her path. I do some therapy, but not as much as she does, because
Mhm.
it's not the path that has typically historically worked well for me. I do other things that support my growth, and she supports those other things, even though she wouldn't do them necessarily. She wouldn't,
Right.
right? Now, when one of us is showing up in a way that is hurtful to the other, we s- we give that feedback. The way that and it might just sound as simple as, the way that what you're going through, what you're doing right now, the way you're talking to me, or the way whatever's going on for you, I don't like it. It doesn't feel
Mm.
good. This isn't working for me. We need to figure something out, because this doesn't feel good. Notice, I'm not saying you need to do something different. You need to
Right.
do X, Y, Z. You need to fix this. You need you. No, this isn't working for me. I don't feel good. What you're doing isn't working for me. What you're doing is hurting me. Whatever. That's feedback. So
Yeah.
we're giving feedback to each other always, constantly, not criticism. I define
Right.
criticism as simply direction given that isn't being asked for. That's
Right.
criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a nice way to think about it, because I think a lot of women in particular, men too, will say, well, I'm not critical, but I'm constantly giving advice.
Yeah.
Well, that's a form of criticism. It's a way of, again, giving direction that's not being asked for. Um, I don't want direction that I'm not asking for. I
Mm.
think, and 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 quite frankly, neither does my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
But feedback I need. I have
Right.
to, if I'm doing something that is hurting her, or that is causing her to feel disconnected from me, she has to tell me. Because if she doesn't tell me, I don't even stand a chance of addressing it.
Mm-hmm.
But as she tells me now, okay, now, well, we're dancing together. Okay, now I can explore for ways to address that, so that we come back into a good place with each other.
Right. Right. And it's so important that you mentioned that, the feedback, because you almost have to create that container to have those conversations. Because to your point, if you're giving that advice and it's not necessarily asked for from the other person, even though if we have good intentions and we mean well,
Hmm.
it won't be received well, right? And the other person may just feel attacked. And it's so important to have that, to your point, dance, where you have that container where both people feel safe having those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And even when I remember, I was having a bad day once, and my wife came into my office, and I was just grumpy, and I don't know, things weren't going well that day, and she picked up my phone and said, call Tate. He's, my childhood best friend and my business partner. She's like, call him. Like, you need to, like, just connect with, go connect with the man. my first reaction was back the fuck off. Don't tell me what I'm supposed to do right now. Like literally back the fuck off was my first reaction. Now she was absolutely right.
Yeah.
In sense of that would have helped me. It would have served me well. But that doesn't, telling me what to do doesn't work for me in that way unless I'm asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't remember. I don't even remember how we got through that. I know we did. We were probably laughing about it within 5 minutes, but um again, every couple has to find their way about how do you support each other in the ways that work for each other.
Right. Right.
Other
Yeah.
people might not have a problem with that. Another guy might be like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll call him and it'll be fine. But me, I don't like to be told what to do, um,
Mm-hmm.
unless I'm asking for direction.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great example. And I guess when you say choose her every day, often, and to your point, it's showing that support, and it's choosing the person the way they are, right? And to expand on that, what does that look like for you? And what do you explore in the book in terms of how do you choose the other
Yeah,
person every day?
it's a great question. Well, there's a chapter in the book where I illuminate that it is a fallacy to think that I get to stay the same person I am today when I enter into a relationship.
Mm.
Like there is this popular trope, you need to accept the person you love for who they are. And I absolutely agree that that's actually true. And though we often use that as an excuse. So you need to accept me as I am. If I'm going to be in a relationship, you have to take me as I am. It's a bit of a paradox because yes, that's true. And if you expect that you're going to be the same ignorant fool who is good at being single, who's good at being by yourself, that 2, 3, 4, 7, 10 years into the relationship, you get to still be that person, you are in for a painful, painful
Right.
disillusionment experience.
Yeah.
Relationship changes you. It's supposed to. And I think that's the beautiful thing about relationship when we're doing it consciously, intentionally, having the sometimes really difficult conversations we need to have. We are evolving and growing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want my wife to stay her 30-year-old mentality for the rest of our lives together. That would just be weird. I want
Yeah.
her to be growing and evolving and having, deeper understandings about life and love and relationship and me and herself. Like I want to be the beneficiary of that richness that she's exploring and discovering as her life goes on. And that's a beautiful gift. Right. And vice versa. She doesn't want me to be the same fool that she
Right.
met 7 years ago.
Right.
um, and every day I want to wake up and both look at this woman I'm waking up next to and say to myself, I am all in on this woman today.
Mm.
And I want to know that she's looking at me and saying, I'm all in on this buffoon today. That we're all in on each other today. That's really I asked this question in the book, why are you choosing your partner today? Ask yourself, if you're in a
Yeah.
relationship, why are you choosing this person? And I tell you, it's okay if you don't know why every day. So we all have bad days.
Yeah.
We all have days where I look at the person and go, God, this would be so much easier to just be alone. Or this is so hard. Do I have to do this today? And maybe we can take a day off here and there once in a while. I say that that's actually quite healthy to take some
Yeah.
days off from time to time. But I'm choosing my wife because as I said, I am devoted to thriving in relationship. I'm devoted to learning how to be a loving human being, to being a heart-centered, heart-connected man. And my wife is an extraordinary partner with me in that dance.
Mm-hmm.
Does she do everything perfectly the way I would want her to? Hell no. And vice versa.
Yep.
Am I never frustrated with her? No, of course not. Do we have our challenges and struggles? Oh yeah, we do. but I am all in on the woman that she is because, because I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't want them to do everything your way anyways, as much as a lot of people
Right.
fantasize about that. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
there'd be a lot of resentment and irritation with that too, I
Well,
suppose.
my wife is very different from me. There's a reason I didn't marry someone just like me. Yeah, we would hate each other. I would be so annoyed with this person. Or either that, or probably if I married someone just like me, we would be living in different rooms in the house. We'd be roommates.
Yeah.
I'd probably be a great roommate to me, but I would not be a great intimate partner to
Right.
me. That would not go well.
Yeah.
Um, and that's therein lies the dance. We choose someone who is very different. She brings very different gifts to the world, to my life than I bring. And you're totally right, man. We choose someone very different from us, and then we like the very things we chose them for then become the things we reject in them.
Right.
Like emotions. My wife's very emotional.
Mhm.
When I first met her, the minute I met her, I felt like someone had just pushed me into the deepest ocean. I could feel her oozing with sweetness and emotion and depth, and I was intoxicating. That's not me. I came through the military. I'm raised a boy in this culture, very athletic, into sports a lot. Like I was, my emotional body was severed a long
Right.
time ago. I've been doing the work of reconnecting that. Again, partly why I chose her.
Hmm.
But okay, now I'm with this really emotional woman and I'm really disconnected from my emotions. Holy shit. So here she is coming with all her emotions, but I, if I, I'm rejecting my own emotions. How am I going to accept hers?
Yeah.
Again, it's part of the alchemy of relationship. It is alchemy. It's like take two common metals and create gold.
Yeah.
But it requires fire
Absolutely.
and time and knowledge and pressure. I mean, the alchemists they were onto something. I don't know if it was actual gold they were creating, but there's an alchemical process that we people, if we want to, again, maybe relationship isn't the only way, but certainly a one of the most powerful ways I think available to us.
Right. Yeah. And how was that adjustment period for both of you, right? Because obviously her being emotional must have been a little bit different for her to come across someone like yourself, and vice versa. Like, how are you guys able to navigate that space? Because often, when one person's too emotional and the other person doesn't show the same emotions, it's like it can be exhausting.
Oh, we failed. We broke up 4 months in. Both of us were like, "What the fuck is happening? I don't think we can do this."
Hmm.
We hit a wall. We didn't really know what was happening. We did not have good uh, coaching or therapeutic support at the time. We were working with someone who did not know how to
Mm.
hold what was happening for us. So we broke up. She broke up with me, actually, and in that breakup, though, something happened for me personally. Something I cracked, because
Mm.
here I was, this man who, so I'm 41. My blogs are literally being read by millions of people. Like, and these are blogs on relationships, mind you. Like
Mm.
I'm being seen as a relationship expert all over the world. I'm coaching people, and this is 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm a world-renowned, relationship expert, and my girlfriend just broke up with me. you know, Talk about a moment, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, wow. And I remember the day she broke up with me, because I was speaking at a conference in a big conference hall. And if you've been to like convention centers, they're
Yeah.
cavernous, they're massive, they're cavernous, the ceilings
Yeah.
are high. It's like, big giant rooms. And what's crazy, Furkan, is that the night before I had a dream that she was going to break up with me. Now, I had no indication this was coming, but I had a dream she was going to break up with me. And that afternoon, I was in another city, and she called me at the end of the day, the end of this conference, and I'm in the convention hall, and people are filtering out. It's kind of empty. And the moment I heard her voice, I knew she's breaking up
Mm.
with me.
Mm.
She didn't do it on the phone, but I fucking knew what was coming. Like, she
Yeah.
made it clear, this is what's happening. And I remember sitting in the hallway, sitting in that giant convention center. My life, everything in my life was succeeding in the ways I dreamed of for so long. And yet love felt, it's like my heart just walked out the door.
Mm.
And I sat there feeling the vast meaninglessness of everything that I was had created and was experiencing. The admiration from people around the world, the blogs succeeding, making money as a coach, like all of these things that were succeed. None of it meant anything.
Mm.
Now, I've never been suicidal, so I don't really know that experience fully, but it felt as if I was walking around in the mindset within which men commit suicide.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of any of this?
Mm-hmm.
That cracked me open. That cracked something in me. Or that we were apart for 3 weeks, and something happened to me in that time that it's like it cracked another layer of armor that had been around my heart,
Yeah.
that I had to hurt I had to be gutted, such that we got back together because we had occasion, some serendipitous event happened, and we had occasion to have a conversation 3 weeks after we had separated, where she felt me so cracked open, so in my heart, so in my feelings, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And she heard again the language of devotion. I remember telling her, like, I wasn't begging her to come back.
Yeah.
I passed that stage. I did beg her at one point. I was angry, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But I remember I was past that. I was surrendered. I was like, okay, this is happening. But I was so cracked open. I was just like, all I ever wanted to do was figure out how to love you, to learn how to love you.
Mm-hmm.
None of this other stuff ever mattered. And it still doesn't matter. That's all I ever wanted. And like, she heard me speaking from that devotional
Yeah.
place of surrender. And she tells me to this day that was the first time she actually fell in love with me, was
Wow.
after we had broken up and in that conversation. So, it was not easy. It
Mm.
was, and by the way, it's not like all of a sudden, rainbows came out and everything was great
Yeah. Yeah.
from
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
on, man. We still had another year and a half, 2 years of, oh my God, why is this so hard? What is happening? Why are we facing this? What is it? You know, all of our stuff coming up and
Yeah.
coming out. So, I always counsel couples. It takes time.
Yeah.
Expect it to take time, even when you think you know what you're doing.
Right. Right. And it sounds like you both were devoted, and and I think the way I look at it is, like, as long as you guys are both going in the same direction, that's what matters, right? And sometimes you may have to wait for the other person because they're having their time or their own
Mm,
season, but it sounds like you were both devoted to make it work and figure it out,
yeah,
and probably saw that commitment from each other, which kind of motivated you to keep going, right?
definitely. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, both of us. I mean, 7 years together. I'm amazed. Couples have been together 20 years, 25, 40 years. I've worked with a couple that was with 45 years they were together before they started doing the work.
Yeah.
I have respect for anybody who is in a long-term relationship. I don't care the state of it. It is no small feat to
Hmm.
spend years with one other human being.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. And then I guess shifting over a little bit, you mentioned, eh, with anyone, throughout time, hopefully the other person and yourself are both evolving and growing. Now, I guess, as you say in your book, or leave her. So if
Yeah.
there's an
Mm.
aspect of because
Mm.
often we do evolve and we go in different directions, or we grow in different directions. Is that kind of what you're getting at? If you can't choose that person every day based on how they're growing and evolving, then there's no point in
Yeah.
sticking around, right? I know that sounds a bit dark, but is that the idea there?
Well, so I've worked with couples that wrestled with this question quite a bit. I'm actually working with a couple right now, together 17 years,
Mm-hmm.
they've got children, teenage children, and they're sitting in the question of do we keep going? And the wife she's all in. She wants to keep going. Husband he's not sure he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're sitting in this question of what do you do? Now, obviously, I can't tell anyone what they should do. I mean, everyone has to decide for themselves what the
Right.
right path is. But one of the things that I, one of the, when I was in that 5-year relationship that I wasn't choosing my partner every day, what I did not realize, and I think I shared this a little bit, tried to at least alluded to
Yeah.
this. I don't know that I really landed the point, but when by my not being all in on her, it was torture for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize it was also torture for me.
Yeah.
But it was torture when one partner is all in and they're ready to do what it takes to be all in and to build something, and the other is not. I think that was my big takeaway from that 5-year experience. Like, wow, in fact, I start that chapter with this sentence. I tortured a good woman for 5 years by staying with her but never fully choosing her.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot in this book that speaks to this. There's a chapter titled "A Man Divided Causes Stress in His Partner." Same thing, a man divided. If I'm divided, and not just even about the relationship necessarily, but a man divided about his work, his purpose in his life. If he when we're not even clear on our orientation in our lives, that stress will often be felt by our partners and can affect the relationship.
Yeah.
You know, this and it works in the reverse, obviously also. I mean,
Of course.
one of the real important questions I think couples should ask themselves and talk about together is, what is the purpose of our relationship? What is the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend right now a male friend who's in his 50s. He doesn't want committed relationship right now. He's just going through some grieving. He got out of a relationship, and he's a wonderful man, and he's capable of taking a woman to depth, sexually, being present with her, and really he's a good man. He has integrity. And so he's having conversations around just I'm not available for a relationship, but I'm available for companionship
Mm.
for the moment. And he's clear about that. But the challenge is that for women, and again, obviously I can't. I'm not a woman. I can't speak for women. I don't speak for women. There are patterns that I can see,
Right.
and 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 I'm willing for any woman to challenge me on what I'm offering here. But when a woman is has an experience of depth with a man, typically, not always, but typically that's going to be very challenging for her to let go of,
Yeah.
to not want more of. And I think for a lot of men, it's much easier for us to dive in for a weekend to a deep companionship relationship experience, get in, get out. Because again, our value is freedom. Our
Mm-hmm.
predominant value is freedom. So yeah, it's great. I get in, I have my beautiful orgasmic experience of, ultimate bliss and freedom and pleasure and and then I'm out. because I don't want the obligation of relationship. I
Yeah.
don't want all of the responsibilities that come with relationship. But my partner does. She wants connection. She wants relationship. She wants more. Well, it's very problematic. I guess I'm not quite sure where I'm trying to lead here. Um, I'm kind of taking us down a little bit of a rabbit hole, I
Well,
suppose.
I guess a question that comes up from that is, do you feel like that's true? I feel like the dynamics are shifting a little bit because of how society's evolved, and I feel like a lot of women, at least the ones I've come across, also value freedom now
Mm,
because they have more options too. And if if one man wants to connect and they don't want that, they can get that freedom from someone else. So I am seeing a bit of a shift, and I
yeah.
don't know if it's specific to any one gender anymore.
Well, here's what I believe, and again, I'm willing to be wrong,
Yeah,
but what I believe is what women aren't putting up with anymore is a man's half in, half out
right,
nature, or with adolescent male presence.
right,
I think of course, a woman wants to feel free just as much as a man wants to feel connected, no doubt about it. And in my experience, um, at least when I think women in general mature earlier in the sense of their readiness for a relationship
yeah,
than most men do. I find that many men aren't really ready to face what must be faced
right,
in relationship until late 30s at their earliest.
yeah,
At the earliest, in 40s even. And as you said earlier, some men never.
right.
Whereas I think, and again, man, you're right. Again, I'm 48. What do I know about kids today?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different world, but
Yeah.
I guess the question around leaving the other person, like, because I think you have to be honest, right? If you come to a point where perhaps, maybe if you started a relationship 5 years ago and now you're at a different point and you both want different things, some people get attached to the idea of, well, we spent all this time together, we have to
Mm,
make it work. And the way I envision it is, if you're not really headed in the same direction, like if you want to grow and your values have changed over time, because we do change, it's having those conversations. And again, it's very difficult to
yeah.
have
Yeah.
because especially if you've put in that much commitment and time and have
Yeah.
all these memories that you share together, it's hard. But I think you need to have those conversations, right? Because
Yeah.
if you can't choose that person every day, to your point, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it's really healthy for people to check in with even their long-term partners every year,
Yeah.
if not more, every year have a conversation about, okay, what do we want to create this year? What's our vision for this year? What's our purpose for this next chapter of our life together? I
Hmm.
think I think it's beautiful to have those conversations, and essential, and regularly, not just when you get engaged. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They're just winging it. I call it the wing it method of relationship. We're just winging it, just doing, oh, okay, well, step one is we date. Step two is we have sex. Step three is you meet my parents. Step four is eventually we get engaged. Then we get, like, they're just checking off the boxes,
Yeah.
not having the real conversations about, like, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of our union, of our companionship? And I think a lot of couples really struggle because they are deeply at odds with
Hmm.
why they're even doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually heard on a podcast, I can't remember who it was, but they said them and their partner ask each other every year, are we going to do this for another year?
Mm.
The beginning of the year, they have that conversation. And to your point, I think it's so valuable to have those conversations because otherwise you could be not aligned and never know.
Yeah, and look, and that I think that's a great question to ask. That wouldn't work for my wife and I. I don't think my wife wants to have a conversation about whether I'm going to choose her again this year. Like,
Yeah.
I'm all in on my wife, and should that change, I will tell her.
Right.
And she knows that. She has that faith and trust that should that change, I'll tell her. But she otherwise
Yeah.
doesn't really want to. She doesn't want to have it now. we have other conversations. We have, well, we don't, when we're mindful about it, we have weekly meetings where we get to bring up the
Yeah.
stuff that's going on. We get to acknowledge each other. There are ongoing practices that we have that are in service of our daily connection, that are in service of us staying on the same page. Um, when couples don't have these kinds of conversations for many months, or in most cases years, they get so far apart from each other. They're that trying to close that gap becomes, and often the gap gets closed because something catastrophic happens.
Hmm.
An affair, maybe a sickness, um, a death in the family.
Hmm.
Something catastrophic happens such that now they have to reckon, or the kids leave. They become
Yeah.
empty nesters. I see that happen as well,
Yeah.
and they have to, now they're just looking at each other, sort of like, well, what the fuck are we doing?
Hmm.
And if you've been having these conversations for a long time, well, you know what you're doing.
Right.
You're having conscious relationship, and as things shift and adjust, you dance with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's I didn't know that that's what I was aspiring to. And I think on some level, this may be naive as well. I don't know if this is true, but I want to believe that on some level, everybody's aspiring to that kind of relationship. That may not be true. Maybe many people are not. They don't. They just, again, I don't know. I shouldn't make assumptions about that. But that's my naivety and my belief in humanity. It's
Well,
hard to make.
if you want a healthy relationship, then that's what you're aspiring for, right? Otherwise, yeah.
Otherwise, you're
What are you?
aspiring for a myth.
Yeah.
You're aspiring to live a fantasy that doesn't exist in
Yeah.
reality. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
better way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, I want to be mindful of time. Just as we come to an end here, anything else you want to share with the listeners that we probably didn't cover and you think is equally important to bring up?
Yeah. I think if we're talking about relationship, I'm always reminding people, be gentle with yourself. I've never met anyone that goes into a relationship thinking, I can't wait to fuck up this person's life. You know, uh, I believe the vast majority of us have good intentions. We just don't have the skills.
Right.
And there are no. I love what Esther Perel said, something about relationship experts that I really appreciated. She said there are no such thing as relationship experts.
Hmm.
There are only people who've spent a lot of time thinking about relationships. And obviously I fall into that category. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, practicing it, but obviously I don't have everything figured out. My wife and I were together 7 years, and we're still learning each other's operating systems. We're still making mistakes here and there and stumbling our way to thriving. So I just encourage people to be gentle on yourself and on your partner. you
Hmm.
know um the number one thing that I think my wife and I are always uh, attempting to reassure each other is that I'm on your side.
Yeah.
I'm not your enemy. And if there was like one thing that somebody took away from this figure out how to be reassuring to whoever you're with, that you are on their side first and foremost. Find out
Right.
how to create that safety, because when you're connected, when you can learn how to create that connection consistently, man, you can get through anything together. you
Yeah.
can you can get through painful mistakes and mishaps and this and that's, but if you don't know how to do that, then the tiniest little thing is going to fuck you up.
Hmm.
And it's going
Yeah.
to throw
Yeah.
you for a loop,
Yeah.
you know?
And to your point, it's believing it when your partner's trying to reassure you, right? And not resisting it.
Well, there are skillful ways to do that reassurance, and then there are unskillful ways to be reassuring, right?
Right.
So, and I think it's just, but that's beautiful, because that means we can learn skills.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
and that's, and if there are any men listening, I'd love to tell them about my Elevate Your Relationship program, which I created for men to learn these skills.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of work out there for women, and there's a lot of work, couples oriented work. But I think for men doing relationship work with other men, that's like almost unheard of.
Right.
And
Right.
so, if any man is interested in that, or just you can find me on my website, bryanreeves.com, Bryan with a Y,
Yeah.
Reeves.com, and ask me about that.
Well, that's great. I was going to ask you, what are other ways, I guess, other than your website, other ways people can find you and get a hold of you?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I know I jumped the gun a little bit there.
No, no, it's all good.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, TikTok. God forbid I ever wound up there, but there I am. Bryan Reeves. You can find me, Bryan with a Y, Reeves. And my website is one stop shopping for all those things. And my book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, is on Amazon and probably internationally wherever you get books online. That the audiobook is coming out very soon, which I'm really excited about. And but if this conversation has intrigued any listeners, men especially, I was such a well-intentioned idiot of a man.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I was ignorant. I was just ignorant. I just didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. And man, I wish somebody would have taught me. What I had to learn in my late 30s and 40s, I wish someone would have taught me in my 20s.
Yeah.
But I know some men, Furkan, you said some men don't learn this ever in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got men in some of my men's work now. They're in their 60s and just beginning to learn this stuff. But you know what? And they'll always say this. I really wish I would have learned this a long time ago, but thank God I'm learning it now.
Yeah.
So, just find me, reach out to me. I would love to help you get where you want to go.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And it's never too late, right? It's never too late.
It is never too late until we're dead. That is too late when we're dead. That's the only time it's kind of too late. But
Right.
Then we don't care because we're fine.
Right.
We're dead. We don't give a shit.
Exactly. Well, Bryan, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I know you've got a busy schedule, and I know you're also vulnerable based on the work you do, but thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your own personal story and journey. So thank you for all of that. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the invite, Furkan. Thanks for having this conversation with me, man. I appreciate it. Well done.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. As always, please subscribe to the podcast if you enjoy the episodes, or leave a comment in the comment section. I always love hearing from you. Thank you again, and until next week.